I was just thinking that I have this blue screen behind me, so basically if someone knows how to use computers and video editing software, they could put me on a beach or something like that. That would be nice. Let's see that everything works. Fantastic. Okay, so let's continue with the next lessons in this e-business in tourism course belonging to Finnish University Network for Tourism Studies. This lecture discusses central theories and concepts that are behind electronic business in tourism. These are the kind of things and concepts that I find myself really valuable to understand regarding this whole world of doing e-business. There's so much more going on in this world than just developing technologies. There's theories that we are going to go through during this next hour and a half or so. The ones that I have encountered quite often, for example, when I'm reviewing journal articles or trying to understand new concepts or trying to understand how consumers or customers or users behave online. I also hope that these things, these concepts, theories that we are going to go through during this lecture could be useful for you when you are, for example, planning doing your bachelor thesis or master's thesis, for example. These are exactly the theories or perspectives that you could use to provide a background for your research or for your study. Tourism itself is, when we look tourism research and tourism as a field of study, it's really practical. It's really applied field of study. That this is something that comes up in tourism research quite often, and very important part. When you read, for example, journal articles, there's typically when they have presented their results, they are discussing the importance of research results from two perspectives. One is theoretical perspective. What kind of new value, what kind of contribution, what kind of new information or insights does the results of this study bring forth to the general tourism academic literature? What is their contribution? The other thing is that they are really discussing about the managerial implications of these results. How results of a study can be used by managers, marketers, entrepreneurs, any other organization or actor working within the field of tourism. And we are really valuing tourism as an applied research stream. And for example, in Finland, most of our tourism studies and tourism students are studying in universities of applied technology, universities of applied sciences. Really demonstrating that how applied field tourism is. And also here in University of Eastern Finland, we have really practical and applied focus for tourism research. Of course, we are interested in academic contributions of our research quite a lot, but we also want it to have real life meaning and usefulness for tourism marketers and managers. these are the concepts that we are going to talk about today. I do hope that some of them are already really familiar for you, but if not, then this is a really good opportunity to know what these concepts contain, what kind of content they have, what they can be used, and so on. So these all have quite a lot of not just theoretical uses, but also really practical applications that can be used really in many ways in tourism research. There's also, when you look at tourism research papers, there's a huge number of different kind of theoretical approaches used. We're going to go through some of the journal articles in Moodle after these lectures to see what kind of theoretical backgrounds they use. But these are the ones that I personally value as an important background and concepts to understand when you are examining basically any kind of phenomenon that is happening in tourism field or tourism business, especially regarding online business. So there's a lot of different kind of theories behind tourism research, but we are not going to go through them, but we are focusing on e-business in tourism and online business. The first few, basically theory of reasoned action, theory of planned behavior, and technology acceptance models, and diffusion of innovations, they are discussing about the same thing. Why we are using technologies that we choose to use, why we are using applications, why we are using mobile phones. And how we are using computers and all these various kinds of technologies. Customer value and customer centricity. The Internet of Me provide you knowledge on what the customers are looking for. As I said already in the introductions, we are not just discussing about technology, we are discussing people and customers and how we can serve them the best. Long tail and Pareto principle are quite similar in explaining how your actions can be quantified, basically. Tourism field has seen quite a lot of disruptive innovations during the past 20 years that we are going to discuss and go through with that theory. Then we are looking at tourism information search and destination choice. It's a topic that we are also doing research here in Center for Tourism Studies. Destination and company image and brand are central concepts in e-business because basically everything we do online is about branding and creating an image of company or destination. Or yourself. Personal branding, for example, is a huge topic at this moment in online business. The concept of flow by Csikszentmihalyi is an excellent glass to provide an excellent perspective that you can use to examine why some things work and some things don't. Especially regarding tourism service development, but also website development, application development, and so on. Tourism service, tourism product has certain characteristics that have huge implications to all the field of e-business in tourism. We're going to go through these different characteristics, what kind of product is tourism service actually, and how these characteristics affect what we do online. Then we are also going to discuss supply and demand concepts. Supply and demand, we encounter them every day when we are doing business, especially when we are thinking of pricing, seasonality, and all these other important things of doing tourism business. And we're going to go through some ideas what supply and demand mean in the world of e-business. And of course, there's something that I didn't remember to say in the first lectures, but I say now that there's a lot of different kind of terms and like abbreviations and words that I'm using here during this course, and some of them might not be familiar for the participants. So, well, we have about a dozen participants joining us online. So, and Mushasi also has a computer, so you can just go and Google what I mean, or you can of course ask me if you don't know what the concept or abbreviation means. So I'm trying to open that then up for you. But there's a lot of this kind of, and especially because most of our students are Finnish that are participating in this course. So for you, and I know from previous years and previous students that this is a new topic for many of you. You don't have that much experience in technology, actually, and might not be familiar with all these concepts. But please feel free to ask me anytime in the Moodle chat, or Mushasi can use his opportunity to be present here and ask questions directly. Oh, wrong computer. As I said earlier, theory of recent action is one of these basic principles that explain our behavior in social settings. Aitzen, Isek, and Fishbein launched this model in 1980s, understanding attitudes and predicting social behavior. Why we behave as we behave, what kind of things are the ones that drive us towards certain kind of behavior. And these are really subjective opinions of a person on these topics that affect his behavior. So everything is, according to this model, based on what you think is important and what you think others think is important, but they are all focusing on your thinking and your values and how you value things. Basically, the model style explains your behavior. For example, why you are choosing a certain product, for example. But this is a really basic model that says that if you intend to buy something, you are more likely to buy it, and your intention is depending on your attitude towards something, for example, a product or a brand, and subjective norm. So what is good for what kind of things you think other people think about that thing you are about to purchase, for example, and then belief toward an outcome and evaluation of their outcome, that you put certain value to things that you think might happen when you buy the product, and then you compare that to what others think about you buying that product, and based on this you can explain why a person chooses certain kind of product, for example. And this is something that really I think everybody working in the field of technology and business should understand. This is like the basic theory behind all this research on why we make the choices we make, and it's in e-business research, e-tourism research, it's a huge research topic, that why we are doing the things that we do, and it all comes down to this model. But this was just a starting point for a huge stream of research that focuses on behavior and why we behave how we do. Based on that previous model, Icek created the theory of planned behavior in 1991. It is, of course, the same thing, that there is trying to explain why we behave, why we make the choices we make. And it is, of course, again, dependent on the intention. Intention is dependent on attitude and subjective norm, but also perceived behavior control. So the person has certain control about his actions. And also, what is new in this model compared to recent action is that attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control have also effect on each other. So they are all connected. Okay. From theory of planned behavior, the latest model that has incorporated also, we've been doing basically research for 30 years now on why people behave as they do, and we now start to have quite a good view on what affects our behavior. And this recent action approach is their latest contribution to this topic. Predicting and changing behavior, the recent action approach. And this incorporates a huge stream of research on the topic. It includes all the criticism. And this is actually a really good example of how theories and science develop. All these different new building blocks in this model are based on criticism that they have received on their earlier models, and then they are tested again if some things affect, for example, intention or each other, and so on. And the model is built one research paper at a time, testing different kind of things, trying to maximize our understanding of what affects behavior of a person. And it's, as I already said, it's in so many research papers, so many applied settings that we want to know why people behave as they do. And this is basically the quantitative model of behavior. It starts from background factors, individual factors, social and information factors. That it basically says that who we are and where we live in, what kind of society we live in, and what kind of information we have in our disposal affects what we believe about behavior, what we believe about what is right, and what we believe what we can do. And for example, if you will find a lot more information about these models, for example, from Google. Google has fantastic Wikipedia has really good articles on these, and of course Wikipedia is often criticized by not being a real academic source, but I find these articles quite good regarding these topics that I'm discussing here. If you want to know more details about what kind of questions, for example, these different building blocks contain, then you will find that information from articles and Wikipedia and so on. But all this model basically tells that there's a huge number of different factors that affect our choices. Some of our choices are rational, some of them irrational. And this is something that has been criticized, for example, with this model, that are we rational beings? So because they all, as you can see from the names, theory of recent action, planned behavior, recent action approach. So all these models assume that our actions are recent, they are logical, they are planned, but that's definitely not the case. So they have their limitations. They are really useful in understanding behavior in some situations, especially when it's planned and when it can be predicted. But there are situations when behavior is completely irrational, unplanned, and for example, Daniel Kahneman wrote a book about thinking fast and slow, which he combined all his research on how people think and make decisions, and there's also good criticism on these recent action theories on that book. But people do not always make the logical and good choice. They can make quite a lot of also illogical choices that we have to model. But these studies that have used these models have received very good results. So they can actually predict people's use of technologies, for example, use of services and so on, quite well using these variables to explain behavior. But these are, when we go more into technologies, we jump to technology acceptance model, which is something that everybody studying information and communication technologies should be really informed about, because it was one of the first attempts to model why we are using computer technology. And based on it, you can see the similarities with earlier models about this, attitudes towards using a technology, and if the attitudes are positive, then there's behavior intention to use it, and if there's behavior intention, then there's probably also actual system use. And behavioral intention to use is dependent not on the attitude, but also perceived usefulness, how useful person finds using some kind of technology is. And then perceived ease of use, how easy it is to use that kind of technology, affects their attitude and usefulness of that technology. So if some technology is really perceived as difficult to use, then even though people find it useful, they are not going to probably use it. Or on the other hand, if it's easy to use, but there's basically no usefulness for some kind of new application, for example, it says that people are not probably going to use it. So it had the building blocks of perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use that really created the whole background on how we develop applications, how we develop online businesses. That they have to be useful and that they have to be easy to use. And this is something that Apple, for example, with their iPhone really perfected, based on this model, basically. But of course, this was in 1989, almost 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, more than 25 years ago. Wow. We have come a long way since then. We have, for example, unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. Venkatesh is an important author in this stream of research. This is a study published in Management International Sciences Quarterly or something like that. Consumer acceptance and use of information technology, extending the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. So it's UTA-UT2 model, very nice model that basically, again, tries to explain why we are using certain kind of technology and why we are not. There's very familiar elements for us in this picture when you are looking at it. Behavioral intention, again, affects the use behavior. Then there's performance expectancy. Basically, usefulness is performance expectancy, ease of use is effort expectancy, social influence brings forward the social concept of why we are using this technology. Then there are facilitating conditions and some kind of hedonistic motivations, price value, and just use habit that has strong effect on use behavior. So if we have, for example, habit of using certain kind of technology or website, that habit could actually drive over the fact that there's another website that's more useful and that's easier to use than the website that we have the habit of using, but the habit still affects the use behavior quite a lot. And then, of course, when you are talking about technology, there are some things that have huge effect on the use: age, gender, and experience. Quite a lot of research has concluded that persons with a lot of experience in information and communication technologies are more likely to adopt, for example, new applications or buy the latest gadgets or start using new kind of features in televisions or something like that. So experience on technology is very important. Gender, of course, there's gender differences research is also very prominent in information and communication technologies. And for example, some social media channels have really huge focus on one gender. For example, Pinterest is really much considered to be a female social media service that women love it really much. Age, as we saw already in the introduction slides, has huge effect on adoption of internet technologies. We are talking about generations. Generation X, Generation Y, millennials, and so on. And this generational gap between people really defines what kind of social media services they use. For example, Facebook is a really good example of this. That when we look at the young people, they are not using Facebook that much. They are in WhatsApp, they are in Instagram, Snapchat, for example, here in Finland. They are using them all the time. I myself, I'm not. I have an account in Snapchat or Instagram, but I don't use it. So I'm myself in that generation that for us, Facebook works quite well. And this is really important to keep in mind when deciding, for example, social media campaigns, that you tend to be, and I'm speaking also on my own behalf, that you tend to be biased towards something that you are yourself familiar with. So you have to acknowledge that there are huge differences in, for example, target markets and customer groups in what kind of technologies they use. And if these groups are based, for example, age, you really have to take that into account. So this is one of the most extensive models that explains why on personal level, why one person, a single person, is using some kind of technology. So based on this, we should be able to, if we quantify all these different aspects, we should be able to quantify if a person is using some kind of service or not, for example. And this is really good model. But that was on an individual level. We also have to talk about on larger scale, on national levels, on global levels. And for this really helpful concept that really makes us understand why we are using technology and who are using what kind of technologies is the diffusion of innovations. When there's a new innovation, something new comes up, it's not instantly started to use by everybody. When, for example, a new mobile phone comes up, new kind of, let's say there's a Project Tango launched by Google. That's first Project Tango mobile phone is now on the market. It's manufactured by Asus, I think. And Project Tango is a new kind of sensor that allows mobile phone camera to understand its environment, understand different kind of objects that it sees. So it's not seeing anymore just a picture, it sees tables, and it sees walls, and it sees chairs, and it can put images behind and in front of these objects, and so on. But we can be sure that even though the technology sounds fantastic, not everybody is immediately going to use it. There will be innovators, the first people who are really excited about new technology. They 2.5%, really small group of people who are going to go there, go online and order that new phone because it has this fantastic new sensor that makes mobile phone experience completely different. This small group of people will be the first ones to try it. They will be the ones that go to social media and say, does the sensor suck? Does the sensor really bring something new to the mobile phone experience? They are the ones that their friends are basing their consumption behavior on. The leading edge of users. If the innovation is good, if the innovators accept it, then the early adopters start using it. It's a lot bigger group that is waiting for other experiences and waiting for maybe even price to drop a little bit. And for example, in pricing, why technology is so expensive at first is that it's first targeted at innovators. They are typically the ones who want to buy the latest technology, no matter what it costs. So it's easy for companies to add a price tag that's designed just for these innovators who are ready to pay more. It's really common with technology, new mobile phones and such, that the price drops quite fast. After a few months of, for example, a new mobile phone has come to the market, its price will probably drop. And then typically that says that it's now ready for early adopters and early maturity to start using it. And when the price drops, more and more people start buying it and adopting the technology to the society. When something has succeeded and made its share in the market and really become popular, we can see that the late maturity and laggards start to come in. There's a really big group of people who wait really long to see that this thing works really and it's really useful for us before they start joining in. And laggards are the ones that, for example, you could think about internet use in Finland and you could clearly see that the old peoples are now the laggards that are not yet using the technology. But slowly, as you can see from the yellow curve, the saturation rises to 100%. So step by step, it's new technology is included, and in the best case scenario, it reaches 100% where everybody is using it. And for example, mobile phones. When the first mobile phones came, you could see that they were these huge chunks of batteries, basically, that weighed several kilograms, and only a very small amount of people were willing to pay that much money and carry it around. The rest of the society just waited for the first ones to adopt it and find it useful, and when they did, and when the cost started dropping and when the technology got better, more and more people started adopting the technology. And why did they start to adopt the technology? Everyone's behavior should be able to be explained at least to a large extent by, for example, this unified theory of acceptance and use of technology model. So if we can understand this model, we can understand why some people are using technology and why not. And for example, when you are launching a new application, for example, it's really good to do this kind of research to find out what kind of factors play certain role in, and in which segments in use behavior of that application. And a lot of research on the topic has been done. So there's another topic that's really important, especially for us in University of Eastern Finland and our marketing department, is the concept of customer value. It's the notion that customer and what they are getting and what they are sacrificing is at the very center of all the actions that businesses do. We aim to create customer value for the customer, such high value that they are really happy and satisfied about their purchase. This requires a completely customer-centric point of view from a company or from a tourism destination. There need to be company culture that's focusing on customer experience and customer value instead of just process management or production process or rules or regulations. All of these things are a threat to creation of unique, personal and valuable customer experience. This is definitely something that modern marketing thought has embraced quite a lot. And there is this excellent article in Wired about the Internet of Me, and you can actually read the article as I speak at the same time, or maybe later on if you want. But this is basically talks about the experience unique to you, as unique as your own fingerprint. And this is something that we are now starting to cry, that you want to be embraced as who you are, and you are who you are, and companies have to adopt to that. So instead of just doing the same product, same service to everybody, to understand what creates value for you, for a single person, it's the company's greatest goal. And always when you are making generalizations, you are already losing this aspect that every customer is an individual. So this is a really, really nice article that you definitely should read. Really, really interested in that, how we are changing the internet to be medium about me, about the person, and what kind of customization options and possibilities we have for each and every one of you. We are talking about mass customization, and for example, in travel and tourism, you can use technology to create very complex and personal packages that no one else in the world has a similar one. But it's still mass customization, so it's not really understanding customer value and what drives a person forward and what brings great experience and emotions to a person. It's just mass customization of systems for a variety of people. So it's one step forward from that. And our professor in Joensuu, Raija Komppula, has excellent slides online that are linked to this presentation. They are a little bit old already, but these are the public ones that I could find. Customer value-based experience design in tourism. This is exactly what we are talking about in our University of Eastern Finland as a basic building block of modern-day tourism business. And this applies to each and every part of tourism business. All the different processes that are connected anyway to customer has to be designed based on customer value. What provides customer value in which point of the process, and what kind of value, and what kind of experiences, especially in the destination. Definitely something that you should read to understand how you can make experiences. And this is something that I reflect quite often, that in digital marketing and in marketing thought in general currently, we are talking a lot about that we have to solve customers' problems. If you go to the web and familiarize yourself with the topic, it's all about how do we solve customer problems. And this is like Silicon Valley talk kind of thing that is really, it's important, okay. But are there really problems in tourism? Because tourism is a very hedonistic product. It doesn't have that much functional value, especially besides business traveling. But when you think about leisure traveling, for example, leisure travelers don't have a problem per se. They want an experience. And they want that experience to start right from the beginning of information search and booking process. They might, especially when they are deciding a destination, they want experience. It's not a problem for tourists to think where I'm going to go next. It's an experience. It's something that very many tourists cherish and value. That whole process of finding out where could I travel next. So it's not a real problem. It's a possibility to create experiences, and this is something that we have to be really good at when doing tourism, online services in tourism. Long tail is a concept that you will encounter probably quite a lot, especially search engine marketing, viral marketing, and crowdsourcing. It's really useful to understand this kind of thinking. And it goes like this. You can see the tall part of this graph. It's let's say this y-axis could be the number of something, like or number of funding, number of searches, and this could be, for example, number of donators, number of different kind of search words, and so on. And what this basically says is that just a few search engine words, just a few crowdsourcing investors, just a few viral marketing people are responsible for a lot of traffic or a lot of searches or a lot of funding. So, and when you move down from the left towards the right, the long tail end of the picture or of the figure, you can see that the amount of traffic, amount of crowdsourcing funders, the amount of money that, for example, a single funder in a crowdsourcing campaign gives you drops, but there are more and more and more and more of them. And for example, you could say, for example, when a person is coming to Finland, let's say they have decided, German tourist or British tourist has decided to come to Finland, and the first search word they probably use is probably Finland, let's say. It would be on the left side of this long tail. There's a lot of people Googling Finland. there's a lot of searches, but it's a one small keyword. But then you can start expanding the keyword. What to do in Finland, where to stay in Finland, what activities we have in Finland, and you can see that each of these search words have less and less people looking for them than just Finland as a word itself. So, and then we can move even further, and they make even more limited searches, like what to do in Savonlinna, what to do in Kuopio, what to do in Helsinki. And there are even less of those searches made. And for example, search engine marketing is all about finding, because the search words that are very often used by tourists are really expensive to promote. So the companies have to find the search words that are not as often used, there are much more of those, but they are much less expensive to market. And for example, in crowdsourcing, this works the similar way, that there are few people who will probably buy or invest the most money, but then as the amount of money invested drops down, there are more and more and more investors coming into the crowdsourcing campaign, creating this kind of long tail. And this is really much connected to Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule. And this is something that I have found myself, that I've done myself quite a lot of online marketing, quite a lot of social media marketing, quite a lot of Google AdWords marketing and events and all these kind of things online. So I'm at this moment I'm managing 3 different Facebook sites, for example, and 2 blogs and several websites and so on. So this is very familiar phenomenon for me. And 820 is a really good number. It's not, of course, precise, but it gives you a quite good understanding of what is happening. Basically, 80% of the things you do are probably not that important, but the 20% of the things you do are the ones that really count. And for example, when you do Facebook updates on a Facebook page, for example, 80% of your updates are probably not gonna get basically almost any kind of attention. It's the 20%, top 20% of your updates that are going to get most of the engagement and most of the page views and most of the shares and so on. It's typically, for example, that 20% of your updates get 80% of traffic or 80% of likes on your website. And there is a book, for example, Living Life the 80-20 Way by Richard Koch, that has some of these examples, what 80-20 rule means in business, for example. 80% of problems can be attributed to 20% of causes. 80% of companies' profits come from 20% of its customers. 80% of customer complaints come from 20% of its customers. So you can see the pattern here. It is not as that this is like built into stone, that this is some rule that you cannot surpass. Of course not. But it gives you a good estimate and direction of what you can expect when you start doing online marketing. And as you can see, it's really much connected to long tail. So they are almost discussing about the same thing. 20% of keywords have 80% of traffic, for example. There's also 10-90 rule and something like that, but it's definitely something that you have to be aware of. And really, focusing is an excellent concept, for example, in online marketing. You have to focus your efforts where it counts. 80% of companies' revenues come from 20% of its products. you have to know what are those products, what are those services that bring forth 80% of your revenue, and why are they doing that? Should you promote more them, or should you promote the products that are not bringing you revenue to increase their revenue? It's an interesting question that you really have to analyze and test quite explicitly to find out the right answers. But that's the best thing about internet marketing, is that when you know that there's something like this going on, that these 20% of your products bring 80% of your revenue, you can test what happens if you increase their marketing. You can test what happens if you increase the marketing of your less successful products or services, for example. And if your tests work, then you will find out answers what you should do. Then we have disruptive innovations that are disrupting status quo. What can you name? Just any disruptive innovation in general. Think about, there's a lot of them on the news, for example. Write down what you think, or Mushasi, if you can think of anything, please. What kind of new things that have come up that are really changing the way we do business, changing the way we travel, changing the way we do basically anything, any kind of innovation that just in very short time changes like all the earlier things or makes them obsolete.
So you mean that what kind of the things?
Yes.
New things?
Yes.
So yeah, the kind of like apps.
Mm-hmm.
Apps or some.
Like well, I'll give you an example that will help you. Airbnb and Uber are one of these disruptive innovations that we are talking about now. Airbnb basically in 10 years, so it's a very short time, it has grown to a huge business, and it's changing the way people travel, how they experience a destination. It's disrupting the hotel industry. So it's before Airbnb, we didn't have an option. We went to a destination basically, and we stayed in a hotel. That was it. But now there's this new thing that you can go and stay in another person's home or apartment. That's really changing our behavior. It's disrupting hotel business. They cannot continue the way they used to do it, but they have to come with something new. And the same is with Uber. They are disrupting the way taxi businesses are done. And for example, in Finland, you can really see this change and disruption that Uber is bringing to taxi industry. And for example, it has been huge regulation, largely regulated area of business, this taxi business in Finland. And Uber has had huge problems in starting the business models because of these regulations in Finland. It's really successful in the United States, for example, and really changing the way people even work, how they use taxis and so on, creating new kind of competition that these new taxi companies have to prepare for. And how Finnish taxi companies are preparing is that they are making a service, an application that you basically can use to send your reservation to reservation center. But that has nothing to do with the business model that Uber has, that everything you do. Because even if you can order a Finnish taxi with your mobile phone, you still have to pay by your credit card, you still have to pay by cash, you get the paper receipt. It's basically exactly the same system that has just been digitized. But Uber provides you everything in your mobile phone, so it's changing the whole thing. What else? At least there's a dozen students in chat, and no one has come up with anything, so nothing to worry about. it's a difficult topic maybe to think, but well, yeah, I already mentioned one before, App Store. Just the fact that you could create an ecosystem. It revolutionized mobile business. It was not anymore about the devices, about the hardware that you sold. It was about the software that was included in this hardware. That was really the disruptive innovation in this era. Excellent. Great. Dina says maybe Hyperloop in the future. Fantastic. Exactly. That would be a huge disruptive innovation. Sofia, autonomous vehicles that don't require drivers. Definitely. What if all our cars would be completely autonomous? How would that change our travel behavior, and how that would change our lives, that we can actually utilize the time that we are in cars in very well. Hyperloop is not a threat just to trains, but also to container ships, buses, airplanes, trucks, everything. Hyperloop, if it's coming, will definitely be a disruptive innovation, something that changes the way we move from one place to another in very fast pace. But of course, it requires a fast uptake of the technology. It can take 20 or 30 years until, for example, autonomous vehicles are everywhere. Ford, for example, predicts that it will be around 2025 that basically all the cars sold will be autonomous, but we will see. But of course, it takes a long time, for example, for the old cars to go away from the market. So, but very good examples of disruptive innovation. And for example, when you think about first cars came in 1870s or somewhere around that, at the end of 19th century. They were electric cars mostly, but it didn't disrupt or change the way people traveled, because they were expensive, hard to get, they were in any roads, good roads, and the quality was quite bad, and so on. It was not until Ford created the mass production of cars. That was when the car started disrupting the way people traveled, creating new opportunities, making sure that no one used horses anymore, and so on. So it can be, they are not instant, but definitely these new innovations can disrupt everything we do. This is a good topic: tourism information search and destination choice. And this is something that we have been working in our Center for Tourism Studies very recently, and studied this, for example, in last summer in Savonlinna with international customers quite a lot. And this kind of process really helps you to understand why tourists make the choices that they make. So the theory behind all of this is that at some point of this tourist information search process, there is a place for tourism marketer, tourism business, tourism destination to affect the customer so that he or she chooses your destination or your business, and finding out what is your chance to be involved, be part of this very complex, multidimensional process is what makes really big difference between companies. For example, the destination choice set literature on the right is a great example. We can start thinking about this, that there's all existing destinations. So basically, there are quite a lot of destinations on this planet, and also, in theory, you could travel to space if you're rich enough. It's dependent on among all these destinations, some of them you are unaware of. You don't know that you even have the possibility of going there. But then you have a huge set of different kind of places where you could travel to, that you are aware of, that you can consider to be your next travel destination. And, well, let's everybody write down to the chat, what is your dream destination? Where would you like to go if you would have unlimited resources? What would be the place that you have always dreamt of going? Traveling for a holiday, for example. You can also write in the chat or just say aloud if you want.
So you mean, what do I want to...
Yeah, where would you like to go? If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you like to go?
So it's not limited?
No limitations at all.
For me, I want to go around some African countries.
Mm-hmm. Africa.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Let's see what others say. Is this working? No one is saying anything. Everybody's thinking a too difficult question, probably. For me, what would be my dream destination? I would like to do a road trip around the States, coming from East Coast to West Coast and then back. Johannes would like to go to Spain. Mm-hmm. Sophia, road trip in USA, Canada. Excellent choice. Yes, fantastic. Especially a long road trip. 2 months, 3 months, really long one. I would go to San Francisco for Suvi. That's a nice place for sure. So, Emma would go to Bosnia and Herzegovina. These are all the destinations that are really built into our choice set, that if we have the opportunity, we would like immediately go. But there is a lot of limiting factors that limit our possibilities to go. For example, money, time, and so on. So we tend to exclude a lot of destinations from our awareness set, even our dream destination. Our dream destination is typically somewhere. Here is Antarctica, Australia, Latin America, Caribbean, Egypt. No specific place for Jonna. But we all have these dream destinations that we cannot actually go to, not at least yet. So we have a surrogate set, and typically when you start planning a vacation, you have about 3 or 4 destinations that you think that you could travel to. Then you have your dream set, that one destination that we would like to go. Then you have an available set that you know that there are these destinations that you could go to, but you can't because of these and these factors. Then you have available destinations that you could go to and that you know of. And typically one of those destinations is your final choice. Sometimes you want to, even your dream destination can be your final choice, and especially when we did research, French Polynesia, oh, that's a good destination for Juha. When we did research in Savonlinna last summer, the trip to Savonlinna in Eastern Finland and Finland was actually the dream destination for some of the tourists, and it was really fun to realize that. But the thing is that now when we start to think, why is this our favorite destination, our dream destination? Why would we want to go there? That's an interesting question, because I cannot say exactly the reason why I would like to do a round trip around the States. There's a lot of reasons probably going on it. And all these things that create our dream destination is because of the brand image and destination brand that we have in our minds. This would be the destination that I would like to visit. And just when you look at this, that there's so many different parts and different kind of strategies that companies and destinations can be part of this information search process. And this is results from our study regarding international tourism in Finland, in Savonlinna in Finland, that they typically choose the destination on really international level. So it was Finland or Sweden or Germany or France or something like that they decided. Destinations are really on the national level. Then they started looking for information what to do in Finland. And that's when they found Savonlinna. And then they started to look information on Savonlinna, where to stay in Savonlinna, where to eat in Savonlinna. And all these different parts of this information search process are the places where different kinds of tourism businesses can join in to the information search process. But we have to be really aware of what kind of searches and what kind of channels and medium and all these kind of things that affect the person's information search. And for example, the left figure, contextual factors in vacation decision making, really opens up how many different kind of things really affect where we are going to go. Some of these you can quantify, but some of them you cannot. But it's interesting for marketers to find out what is their role in all this information search. And we found out that marketers actually have very little role in this kind of destination choice, especially destination marketers, but that's a topic for another thing. As I mentioned earlier, especially when we are talking about what national tourism organizations and even regional tourism and destination management organizations are doing at the moment, it's destination and company image and brand that they are creating. They are creating awareness. For example, Visit Finland, for a long time, their strategy has been to create awareness that Finland exists, which I think is really excellent, because when you look at the tourism information search process, you have to be in the awareness set. The tourists have to know that you exist and that you are an actual destination that they can travel to in order to go there. And for example, I was in conference last week in Budapest, and at the end of the conference they told that next year this conference will be organized in Kenya. And I had never ever thought about Kenya as a potential destination for me to go, but then they presented this really nice video about what kind of experience we're going to have, and safaris and hotels and everything. And I was like, that wouldn't be that bad. So now Kenya is in my awareness set. So I'm aware that Kenya exists and I could travel there, and it would probably be a fun place to go. And for example, if I just encounter plane ticket offers in social media or in some kind of email newsletter that says that now Kenya tickets $4.99 for the whole family, and during semester break or something like that, I would probably go. So it's an interesting process to understand and study. Especially studying this is quite interesting. And where have we come up with technology is that, and this is really important, is that the destinations and companies are not anymore the owners of the brand, because the brand is out there. every tourist is branding the destination he or she visits. Some people more by posting videos, reviews, images, blog posts, stories, Snapchats and what have you online to thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. Some people less, just telling their friends they went to Budapest and it was nice. But in any case, every tourist is branding the destination, and especially maybe not in the way the destination wants itself to be branded. And there is this really interesting paper by Kertinger and Dickinger analyzing destination branding and image from online sources, a web content mining approach. And in that paper, they actually examined what kind of images destinations post online about themselves and what kind of images visitors to that destination post about themselves. And they found out that these images are not actually that similar. They are really different. That the image that they create about the destination is completely different. Is this a good thing or bad thing? Is it still a topic that's being quite a lot discussed in current research? So maybe if you are thinking about this research brand, this could be a good research assignment for this course. This paper could be a good starting point if you're interested in this topic. Destination branding and image creation is still a huge topic in e-tourism research, because all these channels that we use, every website, every social media post, every advertisement, banner, all of these are branding the destination. All of these are branding the company. Each and every employee, each and every person living in the destination is branding the destination. All the people working for the company are branding their company. So, because of this, I would say that everybody working for a company is a brand manager, so to say, or at least working with branding, working with marketing, working with customer service. There was this fantastic example of how someone here in Finland had returned a thing they bought from Stockmann's online store, and they had returned the package back to the company that they didn't want this, and there was a little small toy car in that package that was like belonging to the sender's children or something like that. And the person working in the mailing room of Stockmann found this car in the package and mailed it back to the sender, put it in the envelope and put it in the post and mailed it back and said that I don't want to see kid crying over this car, so we are sending it back. And that post, when the woman got the car back, or the kid got the car back, they took a picture of the letter that was that came with the car and put it in social media, and it went viral. Tens of thousands of views for Stockmann's customer service. So just a single representative of a company in some mailing room back there could have a huge impact on company's reputation. But of course, when we are talking about the internet, I'm blabbering a little bit here, but you can never ever be sure how sincere everything is. So we cannot be sure that this was not just some kind of plan or design from, an example, Stockmann's marketing department. So it's something that we really have to keep in mind, that these kind of events have been found to be really effective branding things, and I'm sure that all the good branding marketing companies know how to do them quite well. So don't take everything for granted. Don't trust everything you read on the internet. That's a good advice. Then we have the concept of flow. It basically states that if the skill required to do something is on the right level of challenge, a person can enter a state of mind called flow, in which he or she completely loses the track of time. They get so immersed into something that they are just gonna do that for hours and hours without ever noticing how much the time is. I think all of us have at some point experienced this, hopefully at least. And when you are thinking about, for example, mobile applications, when the first Angry Birds game came, I do remember that I spent one evening in complete state of flow, just playing it and trying to get 3 stars from every level, and for a very, very long time I had 3 stars in every level. But this kind of flow state is something that, for example, we want to have in tourism products. We want to have in applications. So this kind of application to find inspiration would be, for example, some kind of application, tablet application, mobile phone application, that the person would just browse through the destination information, for example, in complete state of flow. But it requires some kind of challenge for this flow to be created. If the challenge level is low and skill level required is high, then it's relaxation, which is fine. For some products and services, that would be a great goal to accomplish. But if we want to have flow, we need to have a certain amount of challenge and a certain amount of skill. And this is something that we are now looking, for example, in virtual nature project, that can we use technology to create flow-like feelings, create flow in tourism and nature tourism destinations with mobile phones, devices, Internet of Things, and such kind of technologies. But definitely a good concept to understand if you are planning some kind of applications and such. Well, most of you, not all of you, who are participating in these online lectures are really familiar with tourism service characteristics. Why is this course e-business in tourism course? Why wouldn't just normal e-business course be enough? And these are exactly the reasons why e-business in tourism is such a different thing. These things define the peculiarities of tourism business in an online environment. These tourism service characteristics, these are the ones that make tourism quite an interesting field of interesting industry. First, perishability, meaning that hotel rooms cannot be stored, flights cannot be stored. So if you make a mobile phone and cannot sell it immediately, you can put it to the shelves, you can put it to the store and wait for someone to come and buy it. But you cannot do that with hotel rooms or flights or activity services or anything like that. So if the hotel room is empty for the night, it's missed revenue that you are not gonna ever get back. And this has created really complex pricing models, for example, in tourism business, regarding airlines, regarding hotel rooms, and how all these prices are defined. It's because of this perishability. And for example, when you think about hotel rooms, there's a popular trend of selling them last minute. Lastminute.com, for example, is a service that focuses on selling hotel rooms for the next night, because the hotels know that there's not that many people coming in today. We need more people to come and use these hotel rooms, because if no one is using them, they are going to go to waste for this night. So they are selling them with cheaper prices just to make some kind of profit out of them instead of losing that completely. Inconsistency is also one of these things that affect tourism business, for example, and it's also one part why TripAdvisor is so successful is that there's so many factors that affect the tourism product. It's always inconsistent. You don't know exactly what you're going to get. Weather might affect the experience you receive. The people you are in the destination with create different kind of destination experiences. If you had a bad breakfast, your experience is completely different than if you had a nice one, and so on. If you slept well, if you did not. All of these affect and create inconsistency in the tourism product, tourism service. Investment in mobility is also one of these things that really are typical for tourism industry, because, for example, when you think about hotels, they are huge investments that cannot be moved anywhere. So when you build hotel somewhere, it's there. All the investments are built into that hotel for a very long time. It cannot be moved anywhere. And for example, with recent terrorism that has changed the way we travel, these immobilities have become really big things. For example, southern Turkey, Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, and so on. They have huge investments built into these destinations, and they cannot be moved anywhere at this moment, and there's no tourist in these destinations. Tourism service is also people-oriented. Locals, customer service representatives, customers, tourists, all of these people who interact with each other make the tourism experience. And for example, when you go and look, for example, TripAdvisor reviews on restaurants, for example, about Estonia, Helsinki, just look at the top restaurants and see the reviews they have, see the positive reviews they have, see the negative reviews. What are the things that the reviewers are commenting? Do you want to go and check?
Yeah, I want to.
Let's see. Just to fastly go. Let's see, Helsinki. Almost see from this distance. Okay. Okay, this is in Finnish, but okay, there's quite a lot of in English. This was a fantastic experience. Food was absolutely amazing, tasty, and beautiful to look at. The staff were really accommodating. Strongly recommend, even if price is great food, nice staff, good wines to go with dinner. My husband and I had a great evening. We loved good food and have. Okay. Not then. Okay, but you can see professional and friendly service and so on. This is really interesting to look at, because this is a clear demonstration on how people-oriented business tourism is. Staff of that restaurant really has to be people-oriented, really has to know what they are doing. Staff of every restaurant. Then inseparability. You experience the tourism. You cannot separate use of the tourism service in any way. So it's inseparable from use, and then, for example, intangibility means that it's a service. It's not something that you can touch. There is a lot of elements in intangibility, tangible elements in tourism service, but in the end, the service itself is intangible. There's also inflexibility in tourism services quite a lot, and then they are very difficult to imitate. Especially, I think that people orientation of tourism makes it difficult for companies to imitate tourism products. But this is a nice article by Sebastian Kaiser that explains this a little bit more. Then, really important concept of supply and demand. This is prevalent in very many e-business topics. Hotel pricing, seasonality, flights pricing, restaurant reservations, and restaurant prices, and so on. We are trying to find the place where supply and demand meet. Basically, price is on the y, on the long axis, and quantity is on the x-axis, on the bottom axis, going from left to right. And there's a point, price and quantity, that defines where supply and demand meets. Where supply and demand defines how many products are sold with certain price. And when, for example, demand is high, so the demand curve moves from D1 to D2, then also price increases when the supply stays the same. This is, for example, very basic, affecting hotel room pricing. If there is an event in Joensuu, Ilosaari Rokki, for example, they cannot increase supply anyway. There are a certain amount of hotels in that city that can be used. They are not going to build new hotels just for this event. So there's a constant supply, no new rooms. But there's a huge increase in demand. There's thousands and thousands of visitors all coming to the same city at the same weekend, meaning that there's a huge increase in demand. It, of course, affects that the prices of these hotel rooms increases for that weekend. What effect it also has is that there is a more pressure to put more accommodation available. And this is connected to Airbnb. And for example, Uber, both Airbnb and Uber are really much based on the supply and demand curves and how they interact. When there's a lot of demand in taxis in Uber's pricing system, they call this phenomenon surge pricing. So when demand increases in some area, they increase also the price of the service, meaning that these Uber taxi drivers have more and more incentive to go out in the streets and provide these services, increase the supply. And same is with Airbnb. When the hotel prices in Ilosaari Rock in Joensuu are really high during that one weekend in summer, it also means that if you rent out your apartment as an Airbnb apartment, you will be able to get much more money than if you would rent the apartment during a normal weekend. So this kind of demand for supply motivates people to put more, to generate more supply. And this is the same model. This basically this same thing define so many different aspects that we encounter in tourism. Everything is more or less based on supply and demand curves and where they interact and what kind of prices and quantities of product we have available. So we have gone through, mostly I have gone through, some of the theories and concepts that I have encountered in my years of in e-business in tourism, and I do hope that elaborating these concepts will make it easier for you also to analyze what is coming next during these lectures. We are going to go, this was like the theoretical part of this course. So that is behind you now. Great, you almost all of you survived, not all of you, but almost all of you survived this. And when you understand these theories behind this whole phenomenon, you can apply these theories to practice in the next lessons when we are going to go through what is e-business actually in the real world, in real practice like. What companies should do, what kind of channels, what kind of media messages they should use. It's all based on what I have discussed here in these lectures. Did you understand everything? Was anything particularly interesting or boring for you? It's great that I have these students online participating with me, because whenever they have questions, they can just ask Google instead of me and probably get even a better answer. But in any case, if I will be here until so for 10 minutes more, I will be here in this classroom. If you have any questions, you can write them on the chat, and if not, I'm going to shut down this recording in around 10 minutes, and then we are going to have lunch break, and we are continuing. Then it's 1 hour lunch break, so we are continuing 1:30 these recordings and lessons. We are going to go through e-business in practice, and that's the general theme that we are going to go through for 1 day straight, all these different kind of things that companies can and should do in the internet. So thank you all for listening. Please write questions on the chat, and if not, have a nice lunch, and see you later in about 1 hour. Thank you.